Okay, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Usamah Jundulloh Azzam. My student's number is 192122122. Here I would like to present about experimental research. The first is introduction. The first thing that we should know about the experimental research, what experimental research is. It is a study that uses two sets of variables and is performed in a scientific approach. The first set acts as a benchmark against which the second set changes are compared. Quantitative research approaches, for instance, are exploratory. If you don't have enough information to make a judgment, you must first establish the facts. Experimental research gathers the data you will need to make a smarter decision. According to Sugiono, 2006, experimental research is a research which has the purpose to find the cause-effect relationship among variables in a control condition. And experimental techniques are used in any research done under scientifically acceptable settings. Researchers must prove the change in a variable is exclusively due to the modification of a constant variable for experimental studies to be successful. The study should show a clear cause and effect relationship. And there are three types of experimental research. The first is pre-experimental, and the second true experimental, and the third is quasi-experimental. The first point, pre-experimental, ini disebut pre-experimental design karena desain ini belum termasuk eksperimen yang sungguh-sungguh, because there are still external variable that also influence the formation of the dependent variable. Jadi eksperimen yang merupakan variabel dependent itu bukan semata-mata dipengaruhi oleh variabel independen. Hal ini dapat terjadi karena tidak adanya variabel kontrol dan sampel tidak dipilih secara random. And there are several forms of pre-experimental, three forms of pre-experimental designs. The first is case study research design in a single shot. Jadi perlakuan yang diberikan pada suatu kelompok sehingga tidak ada kelompok kontrol sebagai bandingan dari kelompok eksperimen. Perlakuan diberikan dan selanjutnya diobservasi hasilnya dengan melaksanakan post-test. Perlakuan adalah variabel bebas dan hasilnya adalah variabel terikat. Yang kedua ada a single group pretest post-test. Yaitu peneliti sebelumnya memberikan pretest kepada kelompok yang akan diberikan perlakuan. Kemudian peneliti melakukan perlakuan atau treatment. Setelah selesai treatment tersebut, peneliti memberikan post-test. Besarnya pengaruh perlakuan dapat diketahui secara lebih akurat dengan cara membandingkan antara hasil pretest dan post-test. Dan terakhir ada intake group comparison research design. Itu ada satu kelompok yang diteliti, tetapi kelompok tersebut kemudian dibagi menjadi dua. Setengah kelompok pertama disebut kelas eksperimen karena menerima perlakuan, sedangkan setengah kelompok selanjutnya disebut kelas kontrol karena tidak diberikan perlakuan. Maybe that's all from me. I do apologize if many mistakes that I made before, and the next material will be carried out by Ridwan Syarif. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Ramdhan S.I. My student's number is 192122128. Here I want to explain the characteristic of experimental research or random assignment. Random assignment is the process of assigning individuals at random to groups or to different groups is an experiment, according to Creswell 2008, page 300. Random assignment is the method of randomly selecting individuals from your sample to different treatments group in experimental research. With simple random assignment, each member of the sample has a known or equal chance of being assigned to either the control or experimental groups. Completely randomized designs are used in studies that use simple random assignment. The use of random assignment is an important aspect of experimental design. It assists you in ensuring that all groups are comparable at the start of the study, and differences between them are due to chance. The purpose of random assignment is to ensure that groups receiving different treatments are as reasonably equal or similar in any way that could possibly impact the outcome, according to Slavin 2007. Random assignment is an important aspect of control in experimental research since it helps to increase experimental internal validity. In experiments, research chooses an independent variable while controlling for other variables to determine its effect on dependent variable. They frequently employ various levels of an independent variable for different groups or participants to accomplish this. It's crucial to understand that random assignment and random selection are not synonyms. Rather, random selection refers to the process of selecting individuals, so each individual has an equal chance of being selected, according to Creswell 2008, page 645. Next is manipulation of treatment. At least one independent variable must be manipulated in experimental research. This basically means that researchers decide which variable will serve as a dependent variable to be manipulated and which group of participants will receive this treatment, according to Guy et al. 2006. Next is validity of experimental research. There are two: validity, internal validity, and external validity. And for the internal validity, internal validity refers to a study's ability to determine if a causal relationship exists between one or more independent variables and one or more dependent variable. Researchers must be aware of aspects that may reduce the internal validity of a study and do whatever they can to control these traits. These traits, if left ignored, can reduce validity to the point that any results are meaningless, rendering the entire study invalid. There are 8 major traits to internal validity: history, maturation, testing, statistical regressions, instrument selections, experimenter bias, and mortality. And the second is external validity. External validity refers to generalizability of the study. Traits to external validity can result in significant result with simple group, but an inability for this to be generalized to be a population at large. 4 of these traits are the main characteristic, harmful effect, order effects or carryover effect, treatment interactions.
Alright, bismillah, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nuryana Ibnu Amin. My student's number is 192122140. Today I would like to explain about true experimental research. True experimental design is considered the most accurate type of experimental research because it uses statistical analysis to support or reject a hypothesis. This kind of design is also regarded to be the only experimental design that can assess cause and effect relationships. True experiments have 4 elements. First, manipulation. Manipulation is a control by that is control change that is introduced by the research, such as an alteration of the environment, a program, or a treatment. Second, control. Control is an important element of a true experiment that prevents outside factors from influencing the results of the study. Third, random assignment. Assignment of subjects to different treatments, interventions, or conditions according to change rather than systematically for example, as dictated by the standard of usual response to their condition, history, or prognosis, or according to demographic characteristics. Random assignment of subjects to conditions is an essential element of experimental research because it makes more likely the probability that differences observed between subject groups are the result of the experimental invention. Fourth, and the last one, random selection is a form of sampling where a representative group of research participants is selected from a larger group by change. It's a highly recommended design for experimentation in education because they provide the control. This is all of my presentation. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Halo, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Wafi Djulpatlasdurbi. My student's number is 192122145. Here I will explain about the type of true experimental research. Therefore, different types of true experimental design are listed below. Post-test only. The first is the post-test only design. There are 2 randomly allocated groups in this sort of design, an experimental groups and a control group. Before the therapy is implemented, none of these groups are assessed. The therapy is only provided to the experimental group and the post-test is assessed. The therapy is only provided to the experimental group and the post-test is administered to both groups to assess the effects of the treatment. This approach is often employed when it's not possible to pretest the individuals. The second is pretest post-test only design. After forming the experimental and control group, both groups are preset for the independent variable. Following that, only the experimental group receive treatment and both groups are then post-test to explore the impact of the independent variable on the dependent variable. And the third is factorial design. 2 or more independent variable factors are changed at the same time to see how they affect the dependent variable. The researcher can use this approach to investigate 2 or more hypotheses in a single project. The fourth is randomized block design. This design is employed when there are intrinsic differences between participants as well as probable variation in experimental circumstances. When there are a high number of experimental groups, the randomized block design homogenizes them. The fifth is crossover design. Subjects in this design are randomly randomized to different treatment orders, and they are designed to more than one therapy. The compression group should be an equal distribution of characteristics and a high level of similarity among the participants. The subject act as their own control group. In this sort of design, crossover design are excellent research tools, but there is something to be concerned about, and this is the fact that the subject experience with the first treatment may influence their reaction to the second treatment or condition. Next is advantages of experimental research. The first is researchers have a stronger hold over variable to obtain desired result. The second is the subject or industry does not impact the effectiveness of experimental research. Any industry can implement it for research purpose. The third is the results are specific. Fourth, after analyzing the result, you can apply your finding to similar ideas or situations. The fifth is you can identify the cause and effect of hypothesis. Researchers can further analyze this relationship to determine more in-depth ideas. Sixth is experimental research makes an ideal starting point. The data you collect is a foundation on which to build more ideas and conduct more research. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough for me. The next presenter is Arman Daffa Putra. Thank you.
My name is Arman Putra and my student's number is 191222117. I am from D class from Quantitative Research. Today I will gonna present to you all about quasi-experimental research. Quasi-experiments are studies that aim to evaluate intervention but that do not use randomization. Similar to randomized trials, quasi-experiments aim to demonstrate causality between an intervention and outcomes. Okay, quasi-experimental studies can use both pre-intervention and post-intervention measurements, as well as non-randomly selected control groups. Okay, as you can see in the PowerPoint slide, there are the main difference with a true experiment is that the groups are not randomly assigned. Okay, you can see in the true experimental design, the researchers randomly assign subject to control and treatment groups. Okay, and in the quasi-experimental design, some other non-random method is used to assign subject to groups, and then uh, selebihnya Anda bisa lihat di PowerPoint slide. Okay. The types of true experimental research, there is a non-equivalent group design. Okay. In non-equivalent group design, the researcher choose existing group that appear similar, but where only one of the group experiences the treatment. Okay, in true experiment with random assignment, the control and the treatment group are considered equivalent in every way other than the treatment. Okay, but in quasi experiment, where the group are not random, okay, are not random, they may differ in other way, but they are non-equivalent group. Okay, and then the next is regression discontinuity. Many potential treatment that researchers wish to study are designed around an essentially arbitrary cutoff. Okay, where those above the threshold receive the treatment and those below it do not. Okay. And the next is natural experiment. In both laboratory and field experiment, researchers normally control which group the subject are assigned to. Okay, in natural experiment, an external event or situation, nature, result in the random or random-like assignment of subject to the treatment group. Okay, and then the last is in experimental research, random assignment is a way of placing participants from your sample into different group using randomization. Okay, with this method, every member of the sample has a known or equal chance. Okay, chance of being placed in a control group or an experimental group. Okay, that's all from me. The next presenter will be presented by Muhammad Ramdhan S.I. Time and place is yours.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Muhammad Ramdhan S.I. My student's number is 1921 about 138, and thank you Arman for giving me time to do my presentation. And now here I would like to present you about when to use quasi-experimental design and the advantages and disadvantages experimental design, quasi-experimental design I mean. When to use quasi-experimental design. Although true experiments have a higher internal validity, you might choose to use a quasi-experimental design for ethical or practical reasons. For ethical, sometimes it would be unethical to provide or withhold a treatment on a random basis, so a true experiment is not feasible. In this case, quasi-experiments can allow you to study the same causal relationship without the ethical issue. The organ health study is a good example. It would be unethical to randomly provide some people with health insurance but purposely prevent others from receiving it slowly for the purpose of research. And however, since the Oregon government faced financial constraints and decided to provide health insurance via lottery, studying this even after fact is a much more ethical approach to studying the same problems. So, practical through experimental design may be infeasible to implement or simply too expensive, particularly for researchers without access to large funding streams. At other times, too much work is involved in recruiting and properly designing an experimental intervention for an adequate number of subjects to justify a true experiment. And in either case, quasi-experimental design allow you to study the question by taking advantage of data has previously been paid for or collected by others. And use quasi-experimental design, it can be to meet the requirements for funding school administration and ethics, or to evaluate the effectiveness or intervention. Okay, and for advantages and disadvantages. For advantages, higher higher external validity than most true experiments, because they often involve real-world intervention instead of artificial laboratory settings, and higher internal validity than other non-experimental types of research, because they allow you to better control for confounding variable than other types of studies do. And the advantages, the research can attempt to determine a cause and effect relationship even when three limitation as to who and what you could study. And where preselection and randomization of groups is difficult, generating results for general trend can be done by using quasi-experimental design. So for disadvantages, lower internal validity than true experiments without randomization, it can be difficult to verify that all confounding variables have been accounted for. And the use of retrospective data that has already been collected for other purposes can be inaccurate, incomplete, or difficult to access. Okay, thank you. Just it for me.